Good evening and welcome to this special broadcast. I'm Zaka Jacob. The war in Iran has restarted in right earnest. The ceasefire is in tatters. Iran has attacked at least 4 commercial ships over the last 1 week, in response to which the United States has bombed more than 100 locations across the length and breadth of Iran. Oil prices are skyrocketing. It's reached close to $80 a barrel. That's 10% more than what it was just a few days ago. And stocks have been in retreat, both in the US as well as here in India. As tensions once again reach a critical point in West Asia, the question is, are we now looking at a situation where there is a full-blown confrontation between America and Iran? And central to resolving this round of the conflict is the Strait of Hormuz, a critical international waterway through which 20% of the world's oil and gas transits. Iran insists that it will have exclusive rights to charge some kind of a service fee or a toll of every ship that passes through the strait. US President Donald Trump says he's going to have nothing of it and that he's going to bomb Iran 1,000 times over if it tries to control the Strait of Hormuz. What will give and how may we be able to resolve this situation over the next few days and weeks? I'm now joined by a very special guest, former US ambassador to the United Nations and also the critical points person for the US government's talks with the Taliban. Zalmay Khalilzad is now joining us. Thank you very much, Ambassador Khalilzad, for joining us. The ceasefire is pretty much now in tatters. There are attacks and counterattacks. It's not just between America and Iran. Iran is also attacking American allies in the Gulf states. Are we now looking at a full-blown confrontation between Washington and Tehran, and how should the rest of the world respond to it?
Well, it's good to be with you first. Thank you. I see 3 scenarios. One is that there'll be a return to the implementation of the MOU, perhaps with greater clarity on the Strait of Hormuz, because the original MOU stated that for 60 days there would be no interference in shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, and there will be negotiations for a final agreement. I do not know why Iran a few days ago attacked 3 ships, and what was their calculations, what led them to those attacks. But to clarify some of the ambiguity that may have existed, there could be a return to what it was a few days ago. The second option is that there is no immediate return to the MOU, on and off attacks and counterattacks. And number 3, of course, is that it could escalate, as you said, to a full-scale war with unpredictable consequences, including obviously the effect on the economy, the effect on Iran and on the region. I believe that it's possible that Iran miscalculated, overreached, thought that the U.S. won't react or that to the attacks on the 3 ships. And I think there was an opportunity that with President Trump that Iran could have moved in terms of its relations with the U.S. and come out of the pariah state that it is treated by much of the international community.
But Ambassador, central to this renewed hostilities, this renewed clashes, is the fate of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran insists that it will have control over which ships pass through, and it will also retain the right to, toll these ships in some form or fashion, extract a service fee or some kind of a toll on all of these ships. America and its Gulf Arab allies insist that there's no question of, instituting any kind of tolls on commercial tankers. That would be against the United Nations law and the Convention of Seas, how may this completely polar opposite interpretations of that particular point in the MOU be resolved? Because that's central to this current flare-up.
Well, the Iranian position, as you describe it, is unacceptable not only to the United States and to the Gulf state, but to the international community broadly. India, Europe, other great powers, including China even, friendly to Iran, have said there should be no tolling and there should be freedom of navigation in the strait. But more importantly, the agreement, the MOU, specified that there will be no interference, no charging for the 60 days of the negotiations. So if Iran insists that that be accepted as a basis for moving forward, that is, their position be accepted as a basis for moving forward, then I think on and off war or escalation are more likely scenarios. Perhaps with the on and off war, the more probable, and escalation possible, but at this point, full war less likely. But for Iran, if it now judges after a few days that it did overreach and goes back to the MOU, then there may be a diplomatic way out.
The military solution, of course, would be if world powers, including the United States, come together and enforce this movement of ships without any charges, without any tolls, in a free and fair manner through this Strait of Hormuz. The Europeans, I believe the French and the British, had specifically offered their naval vessels to escort some of these commercial tankers along with American ships that are already in the region, but Trump has rejected that. Do you foresee such a situation where the US Navy, along with other NATO partners, will be able to enforce the safe passage of these vessels through the Strait of Hormuz? Or do you think the Iranians have mined it and they have too many, offensive options that it's too risky for either navies of the West or even for commercial tankers to pass through?
Well, it is very likely if Iran insists on control, charging a toll, ships getting their permission, okaying some, rejecting others in terms of allowing them passage, that this would lead to a conflict. And in that conflict, it becomes unpredictable. Today, the president of the United States has said that the United States will control the strait. Well, that will require a very significant effort and conflict. And there are uncertainties and challenges. And how long will it take to establish that control if that becomes a decision? How long will the U.S. do for? Will allies join? Which allies will join? Which won't? I don't think all major powers will join at this point. The conflict, they might contribute in a post-conflict situation where they are not at war, if you like, with Iran. But I see the probability that the U.S. with help from some allies could get involved in a significant conflict.
How concerned would you be that the Iranian government, at least the ones who were negotiating with the United States, whether it's Mahmoud Ghalibaf or whether it is Abbas Araghchi, do not have control over entire parts of the Iranian government, particularly the Iranian military, who seem to be working at cross purposes with the negotiators, that the negotiators agree to one thing and then the military refuses to follow those orders? How concerned would you be that that is probably what's happening in Iran right now?
That is the most important question, in my view, that we don't have a lot of confidence in terms of knowing exactly what's going on. The language from Iran, there seems to be a camp that may have a significant influence in the new leadership of the Revolutionary Guards, including a statement by the new supreme leader, as if there is hostility even to negotiating, being against negotiations. But there may be a kind of division, as you described. Paradoxically, the attacks on the 3 ships a few days ago took place when a significant part of the leadership was in Iraq with the body of the former supreme leader, and he had to be rushed back to Iran. So there appears to be some complexity, to put it mildly, in the internal situation right now in Iran. And I think there is the potential for them to lose Iran. A big opportunity that I saw in the MOU and the President Trump's statements about Iran during the signing of the MOU, that there was an opening for moving towards perhaps normal relations with Iran, reducing and perhaps even ending sanctions, and sort of reintegrating Iran into the family of nations. There may be this internal issue that you said.
Is Iran also playing to the fact that they know that Trump has a threshold for how long he can continue this war? The last time we saw him, claw back when oil prices reached almost $120 a barrel, gas prices in the US reached $5 a gallon, and he has got these midterm elections coming up in November. Are the Iranians playing for the fact that they know that time is on their side and Trump has a threshold because of domestic political factors?
That is the question of whether they are calculating correctly or they are miscalculating, because the president, this has become now a defining issue for him and for his administration. And there has to be a good outcome for the United States from this conflict. Otherwise, the cost in terms of the world economy, the cost in terms of domestic politics could be significant.
I want to talk about America's Gulf Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Oman. These have all been attacked in the course of these last few days. Iran says that's because they are party to America's sins of omission and commission in the region. Yet at the same time, all of these countries are major oil exporters who are dependent on the safe passage of their ships through the Strait of Hormuz. How do they approach this? Do they put pressure on America, put pressure on Trump to get back to diplomacy, to try and give peace another chance? Or do they say, let's settle this problem once and for all because we can't be held hostage to an emboldened Iran?
There are 2 points to make about this important question. One is that while the Gulf states are developing plans to lessen dependence on the Strait of Hormuz, pipelines north, pipelines to the east across Saudi Arabia, various options. For the foreseeable future, they're very dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. And it's not in their interest to have the Iranians holding them by the throat, if you like, for the shipment of their oil, which is their principal source of income for many of them. So therefore, they would like to get the diplomatic settlement for this to end as soon as possible, but with the freedom of navigation for them to be able to trade as they did before the war. But would Iran be willing to agree to a diplomatic settlement that meets the second concern, the freedom? And if they don't, they face very difficult choices. And I believe that they would want the United States and others to put pressure, military pressure, other pressures to come to an agreement that meets their basic need to have freedom of navigation and shipment through the strait.
You mentioned earlier in the conversation about most countries around the world, India, China, have all said that the strait should be open, it should be free. China imports almost 50% of all the oil that Iran exports, and this was before the ceasefire agreement, the MOU was arrived at. Why isn't China more vocal and putting more pressure on Iran? And the same applies to Russia as well. Russia has been giving military support and intelligence support to Iran for a number of years now. Why are these countries not putting pressure on Iran to open the strait up?
With regard to Russia, it may be conflicted because the lesser exports from the Gulf, the more demand for oil, Russian oil, the higher the prices that they will collect. So I don't know where Russia is on this in practice, if you like, regardless of what they say diplomatically or in public statements, that they want the strait to be open and for a lot of oil to come out. China is a different story. As you said, they're very dependent on it. They do get some oil from other places, but the Gulf is a major exporter. What they're doing behind the scene, I do not know. Maybe they have reached an agreement with Iran not to interfere with shipments of oil to be exported or sent to China. Whether that is can be done in a differentiated way, but it won't be acceptable even if it is to the United States and to the rest of the world. The principal policy is now Iran and the U.S. are the two principal players in this drama. Others have influence, but the decisions are made by these two. And I believe that the U.S. cannot accept, will not accept, that's my judgment, for reasons I just explained earlier, the control of the strait by Iran and putting limitations on the export of oil from the region for reasons that I described.
Let me get one final word from you about India. India is, of course, very concerned with the rise in oil prices. We are the third largest importer of crude oil anywhere in the world. So any change in international crude prices is a very sensitive issue here in India. And yet, there's been some criticism about the government's approach to this war. India used to have very cordial ties with Iran. We'd invested in a particular port there, over $100 million, and now have to pretty much, put our hands up and give up on that port. And India has also consciously, over the last few years, thrown its weight behind Israel and the United States of America. And now many are saying that there should be a rethink in that policy, in those strategic partnerships. What would you make of that?
Well, India, I believe, is hoping, but the hope may not be sufficient, but hoping and calculating, that's better, that the U.S. will find a way out of this, that India prefers not to get involved in the conflict, and we will have to see whether that calculation is correct or not. At this point, it's too early to tell. But the alternatives to cooperation with the U.S. and other partners, India has good relations not only with Israel, but with UAE, with quite a number of players in the region. Is there a better alternative? And what is that alternative? And would it serve India's interests better? I haven't heard the argument for an alternative approach to what India is doing. But the U.S., I can imagine, as it's been critical of allies in Europe with regard to what they are doing or not doing in terms of being free riders, that may come also towards India at some point. I don't see it in the immediate future, but if you see a scenario of a protracted war, and I mean months and maybe longer, then that will be an issue perhaps in this case as well.
All right, Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad, thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. Thank you.
Thank you.